Hey everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Co-Creating with AI. This is our journey exploring and understanding the fast-moving world of AI. Today we're going to talk about coding with AI. I'm Martin Källström, and with me, as always, my co-host Rasmus. How are you today, Rasmus?
Really good. I'm in town for like a PR interview and some meetings. Yeah, I'm actually doing a lot of like in-person meetings now, which is quite fun. It's been like a long period of not doing that, just focused on development and things I can do online. But yeah, enjoying it actually. There's something to that human touch, yeah. It's not all
Yeah,
AI.
yeah,
So that's great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm spinning up now after the summer still, but I'm when I have free time over, I'm working on a new working pod. We have a room left over actually with like facing the garden, so I'm going to have a great like a big glass door into the garden looking out and have a great working space there for me. And
Cool.
yeah, as a solid dev, that it's great to have the opportunity to just build uh, workspace the way you want to have it, and having lots of fun with that right now. So, coding with AI. Uh, how do you frame this topic?
I mean, I think it's interesting that I mean, at least from my perspective, there was the initial hype where everyone was like, all coders are now twice as effective, and like 50% of coders use GitHub Copilot. And I don't know, when I speak to developers, I mean, there's still been like pretty clear split between those who try it and like nah, and then those who find it useful. And my sense is that it's primarily been like broadly useful for, I guess, more simple things. I mean, all the demos are like I'm building
Mm,
a zombie apocalypse or game that's really ugly, and then getting the AI to write for you, which is still like cool. Um, and what I'm sort of starting to see, especially during the last week, so it's cool with the news, and I mean we're going to get into it, uh, is that it's taking like one step up now with like Karpathy, who's like he was ex like head of AI at both Tesla and then something senior at OpenAI, right?
yeah, exactly.
Um, and basically coming out with his tweet that he's like doing everything with Cursor, which is a like an IDE, so it's a tool that developers use to write their code and manage it. With Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which is the latest, like most powerful model from Anthropic, um, integrated in, and that he and others are starting to really say, "Oh wow, this is really useful." So that's like one of the things, and then there's on the agentic side, there's also the genie to dive into. We can get there later. So
Mm,
I mean, but you've actually, I mean, I'm not a developer, so I'm more like observing from the sidelines. But you've been like a Cursor user for a while, right? I think we spoke
yeah,
about that before, and now started to use Claude as well in there.
yeah,
Is that correct? Yeah. So tell us.
exactly. So, Cursor, yeah, so Cursor is a fork of VS Code, which is Microsoft's universal code editor, which they have open sourced a long while ago, and which has been hugely successful. And what Cursor has done, they are a startup that recognize that we don't want to be just a plugin to um, VS Code. We actually want to be able to in the future like uh, integrate our technology deep into the core instead of just doing plugins. So they forked VS Code and they're keeping the fork up to date with what Microsoft is releasing, as well as releasing their own stuff into Cursor. And the latest addition to the feature set, which is a big game changer in making this available for a lot more people, is something called the Cursor Composer, which is an ability for AI, especially together with Claude 3.5, to start a project from scratch in any platform, any technology, and and create the project structure, create the files, work with the project as a developer would. Very, I would almost say autonomously, but it requires still then the human prompting. So there's there's definitely a human in the loop component to it. But for small projects, what I find is that with the composer, I can actually in some cases stop looking through the code and just code in English, and that has been Carpathy's um, sort of standing joke that English is the last programming language that we will need, and that he's now coding almost everything in English instead of in a programming language. And this speaks to the success of Cursor as a UI, but also Claude as a really proficient AI in coding.
Yeah, I think there's like a few interesting there. Like just first on the UI thing, this thing where you have like where you are able to provide someone who's like a professional with their existing UI. You know,
Mm.
in this case, I mean, if I remember correctly, the left-hand side, which is like your, what do you call that? Basically, where you view your file, right? Where you view
Yeah,
your code.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
the composer to the right, where you can interact in like a chat-like manner, right? With,
Hmm.
say, Claude
Mm.
and ask it to say write code. But then the
Mm.
integration in between, if I saw that correctly, is basically, okay, this is good because it produces a code snippet, it reasons and tells
Yeah.
you why this is good. And then you can like press play or like implement, and it starts running
Mm.
through your code to the left and implementing those changes
Yeah.
everywhere it's needed. Is that correct? That's the way I saw it in the videos.
Yeah, exactly. And what's new with Cursor and Composer is that it can work on all the files in the project at the same time. Previously, it's only been interacting with one file at a time, and you need to decide which file to focus on at the moment. But now the AI can, uh, when has a new feature to implement, it just goes to every file that needs to be touched, and puts a suggestion of changes into each of those files, and then you accept all of them at once, or you read through and accept some and change some.
And I
But
think that's interesting, right? I mean, it's like that's like a almost like a bigger thing here. That I mean, in code, if I, you know, I'm not a developer, right? But rarely you build something meaningful in one file, right?
yeah.
That's just like bad practice, and not feasible. So what like that thing is basically it's now able to handle like a more complex system of information,
Mm.
which I think will apply to many other domains as well, because things are interconnected, whether those are legal agreements that refer to each other, or they're like marketing material where you have strategy linking to communication concepts, linking to different audiences and
Mm.
markets, and linking to specific pieces of like marketing material. I mean, I could probably go on and on, but I think that's true, you know, in financials as well, you know, especially in like more complex organizations. Financials is not one spreadsheet, you know,
No, no.
it's like it's a lot of different, let's call it spreadsheets then, or
Mm.
databases, or you know,
Yeah,
linked together, right?
and there could be strategy documents, business plans, organization charts, lots of stuff that goes into creating a holistic view of an organization or a project.
Okay, so what's the experience like? I mean, if you're, I mean, you've used a cursor for a while,
Yeah,
and now with GPT-4, right?
yeah. So, in switching from sort of old school Cursor to enabling Composer, which is some is setting you have to, since it's still in beta, you have to go into settings and enable it. And switching over, which I had to do since I've been using Cursor for a while, switching over to Claude 3.5, it means that um, I just it's like leveling up, and getting back into that sense of magic again, where which it was initially, but it, like, as you all know, when the initial magic quickly becomes a work tool, and but this is such a significant improvement that you get back into that sense of magic again.
So before it was just to make it concrete, we should probably start figuring out how to do like screen sharing for those who like
Yeah,
watch on YouTube. Let's do
yeah.
that. Uh, but just to like try to visualize it, if I understand it correctly,
Yeah.
before Composer,
Mm.
you had a chat with, say, you know, an AI model, and it wrote some code for you, and then you had to figure out how to put it in there and like copy paste it from there. Is that the main? But now it can implement it and go through. Is that the main
So
thing, or what's the main
so
thing
so
in the UI
the copy
experience?
pasting, was actually the biggest problem that Cursor solved from the start, that you could stop copy pasting from ChatGPT into your IDE. But with Cursor, the AI can operate straight into your file, but it was still a very, very hands-on experience. You really had to know how to code, how to structure projects, how to implement features. Like when a new feature needed implementation in sort of the old Cursor, before these power-ups, you still had to think about where do I actually put this feature, and in some cases, or a lot of cases, that's still a good line of thought to have. But if you can break down your projects into micro architectures or microservice architectures where you can really compartmentalize, so each code base is kind of small, then you can actually stop thinking about where do I put this code now, what file goes into where, and just leave that to AI, because it does um, Claude does a very reasonable job in figuring out the architecture of a project as well. And you can always prompt it. This is the folder structure I would like to have. This is how I would like to organize the project, and you could put that into sort of the master um, command for the AI, which the custom generation command, which is available as a feature in ChatGPT since a long while ago, is also in Cursor. So you could have your custom instructions. And in my custom instructions, I've put that so that the AI knows that we are working together in a fork of VS Code called Cursor. um, I, we're working on a Mac, so that when it gives me instructions about shortcuts, it gives me Mac shortcuts, and I'm asking it to also like you always should ask the AI to be really intelligent and give the user a 5-star experience,
Mm.
just to ask it to level up in terms of intelligence if there is some slight nuances of that to gain from the latent space.
Cool. So is that the so is the main thing the multi-file thing with Composer? Is that the main
Yeah,
kind of new different that it can it's not just
yeah.
like here and then you have to think about everything else, but it can actually, think look
So
through everything and see
it is the
what
main
needs to change.
thing.
Okay.
It's a main, and it just enables, like, you no longer need to actually know how to code.
Right.
It's kind of sounds like a small feature, but now you could very well build your own Mac app or your own web app or your own iOS app from scratch, just from knowing English and being really picky about what you want. And you can do like Figma mockups and send it into uh,
Mm.
uh, uh, Cursor Composer and ask it, like, this is what I want in terms of UI, and it will go from the sketches, because since it's a multimodal model, it will work from the sketches that you provide. So
Yeah.
you can have a Figma workflow where you put the files from or screenshots from Figma into Claude, and Claude implements them. And I've also seen these crazy experiments of integrating Cursor and Claude with V0. I don't know if you've seen that as a
No, I haven't
tool.
seen it.
So V0 is it's really fun. Started out as an experiment, but is now a serious project from Vercel, where you prompt for React components, so and whole pages with hierarchies of React components. So you can work completely in V0, and the URL for that service is V0, just 2 characters, v0.dev, and you can work there iterating on your React components and then pull out the code. But you can actually also, I see some integrations where you instruct Claude on how to prompt V0. So you close the loop and allow Claude to use like that specific and intelligence, which is available inside V0. They train it on a specific training set of React components from descriptions of the UI you want, and then um, yeah, that just becomes like then a sub agent of Claude that is specialized in React components, and that's just a hint of what is to come, where
Yeah.
you can have like sub intelligence is supporting the main intelligence or agent that assists you in coding.
And that is it. I mean, it's really funny. Like two things there that stand out to me. First of all, just to clarify, right? So let's say that, Cursor is like the leading. I mean, they probably are the leading IDE, like the leading tool for developers. UI for developers to use AI as part, like to build software, and then you put in the V0, which can help you produce React components, which is like the way things works in the front end of
Mm.
the product, right? And then let's say you integrate Galileo, which where you generate UI and UX designs. Then what's
Yeah.
interesting there, if you think about those integrations going all across, I mean, in the beginning, it would probably be like a bit of a fight of what goes where, but in the end, normally the APIs goes both ways,
Mm.
unless someone has really, really dominant kind of position in the market. So then for me, I'm not, but like let's say I'm a visual thinker,
Yeah.
and then I can work in Galileo, so to say, as a UI
Hmm.
to design an app, and then that can call, let's say Cursor and V0 in one sense. My
Mm.
prompts will utilize those capabilities down the stack, downstream, to actually build the app, when I'm happy with the designs.
Mm.
Or
Yeah.
if I'm a developer, I'm in Cursor and I'm generating my code, and then as part of that, I'm generating designs
Mm.
from my kind of, let's call it logical thinking. If I would put developers in that bucket, right? Starting
Mm.
with the logics, how things will work, technically, and then manifesting that in like design. So it's
Mm.
it's really like it's when these things start fitting together more and more well, like you explained with like
Mm.
V0 and Cursor. I think that's when we're getting to these kind of dreams of like one person unicorns and stuff like that. Where
Yeah.
you really have like someone with ideas and a good way to communicate them will be able to do so much through these like more and more agentic systems.
Mm.
Uh, I can really see that more and more now in that.
Mm.
But I think the primary thing there is like UI will still be important. If I would assume there, like there are more and more agents for specific things, people are still going to pick their UI, right?
Yeah.
And that's like really I mean, of course, there needs to be some kind of really powerful functionality in that UI, like Cursor, the way they integrate. But I mean, Cursor it's almost like a UI, right? I mean, they didn't train their own models, right?
No, no, it's very much a UI, definitely, and of course there's a lot of code in there to manage coding projects and so on and plugins, but that's all from VS Code. They did a really smart thing, like that based their tech on VS Code as a tech stack, and just adding in. They have full control, but they still have like they are standing on the shoulders of giants, literally. And I also want to recommend for someone, if there's someone keeping track of the tools we're mentioning, to mention find.com, phind.com, as a tool for tapping into the vast space of open source projects out there and tool stacks, because that's a startup that has indexed hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of open source projects. So they sort of rag into that repository of open source project. When you ask it, how do I solve this problem, they can easily pull out the best tools and the best open source projects to solve your problem. So that now we've been talking about how to build UIs, and then when you get down to also building backends and integrating to APIs, then find.com is a super great resource for that. And they actually have also a VS Code plugin that you can use, and then that of course can be plugged into Cursor as well, so you can integrate Find straight into Cursor.
That's amazing. I think that's a good segue to like the other big news in AI agents, let's call it
Yeah,
AI supported development, like this week, right? Which was Genie from Cosine,
yeah,
where
and
they based. No, go on.
which you have to tell me about because I'm
All
not
right.
familiar. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
No, I had I mean, I had a look at, I've had to read through the updates and the look through the demos and listen to most of a really good podcast at Latent Space with the founder of Cosine, which is the company that now has released Genie, which is a coding agent, so it can like work very much autonomously across your code base or starting a new code base for based on what you tell it to do. And it basically destroyed like previous, like the results of previous models. So I don't know if for those who have been following, there was a coding agent called Devin that got a lot of hype like half a year ago or something, and it basically reached 14% on some well-known benchmarks. One that's called like
Mm,
Swebench, on basically like, can you solve coding problems?
mm,
It's like a test almost. It's like a set of tests, and this one got to 30%, and like 44% if you take the open AI version of it, which they call the verified Swebench.
mm,
Um, and there's a bunch of interesting things in there. But first of all, like the way I understood what they did here is they fine-tuned like GPT-4o, so OpenAI's latest flagship model, on huge amounts of data, and actually synthetic data, which I can dive into and explain. But what they did there was not take like all of GitHub and
mm.
all of the open source projects, which apparently is like a large percentage just README and README updates,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but they actually uh, looked at the key tasks of a developer, which is something like bug fixing. It is something like commenting. They're basically a lot of different like and much more specific. Actually, I'm probably explaining this badly, but very specific parts of what a developer does. Um, and then they generated synthetic mistakes and synthetic correct examples
Mm,
on this, and then they post trained, which is basic fine tuning GPT-4o to say these ones are bad and these
mm,
ones are good, and did it on a huge amount of synthetic data that they had previously then generated. Um, and this apparently, just upped the level of competency by a huge amount. So that's really interesting. Like I think for like I think it's going to cause a little bit of a re awakening to fine tuning. Just after, for
mm,
me, definitely after listening to that, because I think that applies more broadly. And the second thing is that they it's an example of what we just discussed. So they apparently integrate like perplexity in there to go out and like search for information as part of the workflow of the agent, and have gotten down to basically the agent understanding how a good developer works. So they really got down into like showing the AI as part of this post training as well, how an good developer
mm,
works, like as a flow, as a process,
mm,
which is of course something I believe a lot in. We've spoken about that before, but I just thought that was like really interesting that they could make such a leap, just so to say based on those two things.
mm.
And it's pretty like probably exciting for them because like Devin, like Cognition by Devin got valued at like 2 billion after their 14% result,
Yeah.
and these guys have been at this for a while and gotten here.
Mm.
But do you have any thoughts there, just from my description there? I know you haven't dived into this, but just from what I'm saying there, what are your
Yes, yeah.
reflections?
So just to complete the segue from Cursor into talking about autonomous agent coding, that's really the sort of frustration for me when I work with Cursor, that I'm still so actively necessary because I need to push the buttons and prompt the AI at every step. And it's all like the excellence is all in a UI, which makes like the leap into autonomy further and further, the more of the innovation that is in the UI. But how you are now um, describing Genie, sounds really like the holy grail of the next step, which is autonomous coding, where you can leave um, the much more of the project up to date. Can you talk a bit about the autonomous aspect? Like what is the capability there, if you know?
I mean, so what the way I understood it is that you can give it a random task from, Swebench verified, and it will
Mm,
complete it correctly 44% of the time.
yeah,
Which is, of course, I don't know if that's like something you want to unleash on your code base yet,
yeah,
just from like thinking in percentages there. Um, but from what I understood, they've really like, I mean, if we just break this down, right? So we look at
mm,
agents, we have
mm,
the reasoning and planning capability, which is necessary to like, you give it an instruction, it's going to break down how to do it, which is also what I'm very impressed with, even with like the base capability of like, say, GPT-4 or Claude, like we use in our own research agent at Multiply. Um, and then it's the tool use, and that's pretty reliable now, as we
mm,
discussed last time with especially JSON enforcing, so you can enforce that it's going to use the tools correctly. Um, and then you have all these specifically trained models, whether they're trained from scratch or fine tuned. I'm not sure if uh, the V0 that you mentioned was fine tuned or trained from scratch. But then you
yeah,
have these specifically trained models to, in some way, specifically trained, LoRa trained, whatever, fine tuned,
mm,
whatever, um, to do something very specific. Um, I think we're like very like all of these things seem to come together, and as I understood their test, it's not like you can give Genie like a very specific mini task, but you can give it a high level thing and it will do all the things
mm,
like to get it done, and will do so with like unprecedented like precedented success rate.
mm,
Um, and I think personally that if we get a step up in like planning and reasoning capabilities, say that the Q star strawberry whatever rumors from OpenAI are true, and
mm,
they actually have like a fundamentally new way to improve the reasoning and planning capabilities of the models, then I think all of these things just like feed into each other, and that's like the main missing
mm,
piece here. Because right, and the last thing I forgot to mention was like RAG, which is bunch of data, embed it in a vector database. We talked about this before, and then the model can like find what it needs from that data set with like pretty high reliability now. So I
mm,
think like literally when I look at this and look at agents across the board, the only missing thing is like getting to the like making the model like better, smarter in that sense, better at reasoning.
mm,
Um, so those are my reflections, but I haven't like I didn't I saw some silly examples um of Genie doing like it was someone had built like this zombie apocalypse like simple game, um and then they asked to like, hey, I want the first 2 seconds the my the player should be invincible to the zombies,
mm,
and I want you to put a yellow like aura of invincibility around the player,
mm.
and that was one click.
Yeah,
Took
awesome.
like a minute, but that was like one click,
Mm,
like one row of text.
mm.
I could write that. You could write that.
Yeah,
Anyone could
yeah.
write that. So we're still getting to like creative of like unleashing like.
In that sense, it sounds very much like a Cursor Composer as well. That you just prompt it with English and it performs instantly the updates needed to the entire code base to achieve what you prompted for.
Yeah, exactly. So I
Yeah,
haven't. I don't know if they like how they compare, but
no, that would be an interesting
yeah.
comparison to make, and I will definitely check out Genie after this. Sounds very exciting. And also, what comes to me is the analogy of space travel. That, like, if we would like to go to the next star, or um, whatever is far enough away in space, and most things are, like whenever you shoot off a rocket, when they arrive, there will already be humans there, because the next generation rockets will be faster, and
Yeah,
then and when that next generation arrives, there will also be humans there, because the third generation will be even faster.
which means
And
that no humans will ever go because they're not going to be the first there, right?
exactly.
No one will
and
ever go.
and that's the case with soon with coding with AI as well. That should I work 3 months on this, or should I wait 2 months and then work for 1 month? like what's the best, and that as is that, I mean, that is something that comes to be, but then the reality of iteration is that you need to, as quickly as much as possible, get demos and tests to market, and just test the hell out of it with actual real world use cases. So it's always better to start today and not 2 months from now.
Yeah, I think the rocket example is like it's hard to like upgrade the rocket in space,
Yeah,
but in
exactly.
the company on Earth, you can like actually
Yeah.
iterate.
Yeah, but one development that might happen is that we progress as if you look at the toxic side of humanity, we progress from like bots spamming tweets and spam blogs to being able to spam apps, like spam SaaS services or spam
Wow,
iOS
yeah.
store games, or like, and to actually like spam companies into the real world. And that's the other side, like the bleak side of this future timeline.
Why do we need to end on a bleak note? That's more. That's not the gusto of this
Yeah, but okay,
podcast.
so
Uh,
but the bleak is for the toxic people using it
right. Okay.
for
Of
bad
course.
means, but you
Of
and
course.
me, Rasmus, we're gonna use it for good
Yes.
means,
Of course.
and be able to not spam but carefully select what apps to build and put into the world to do good for humanity.
Yeah, of course. No, but I think it's like just to complement that, it's like it's amazing like the explosion of creativity and like what people can do that has come from all of these platform shifts. And let's not reiterate them all, but like it is nuts.
Mm.
So if the next, so to say, Facebook post is an app, if it's as easy
Hmm.
to, which we're going to get to, it's going to be interesting, whether it's in entertainment or in business. But yeah, let's cut off there before we're trying to keep to the sub 35 minutes here. So let's do that. But
Yes.
yeah, really good talk, Martin, and thanks for sharing about Cursor. That's really like I'm actually I need to invest in a new MacBook, and then I'm gonna try this out
Yeah,
and build some stuff.
you
It's gonna be
should
fun.
definitely, and to the listener as well, download Cursor and build the app you always dreamed of having.
Cool. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.